Welcome, friends and warriors, to another episode of Power Over Pink. I am your host and breast cancer survivor, Tara Cam. On my channel, I highlight warrior stories, breast cancer journeys, and everything in between, those who are fighting, thriving, and surviving before, during, and after breast cancer. So if you know anybody who has been touched or faced breast cancer, of course, share my channel with them. But let's just get into it. I've got a beautiful guest with me here today. I actually had the pleasure of meeting her at my very first Young Survivor Coalition event, actually my very first event ever. And so I was thrilled because she was willing to sign up to share her story. So please welcome my beautiful survivor friend, Molly, to the channel.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about you and where you're from, a little backstory.
Sure, yeah. I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I am 35 years old. So I was diagnosed just over a year ago, last year on April 8th, at the age of 34 with triple negative breast cancer, stage 2. It was a big shock for me. I do a lot of things, but one of the things I do is I'm a personal trainer and nutrition coach. So fitness is a really big part of my life. I am actually a professional natural bodybuilder.
Wow.
And I've somebody who lives, a very healthy lifestyle. So it was one of those things, you don't think, and I don't think anyone ever thinks it's going to happen to them, right? But I was like, oh, I'm doing all the right things, so like I'm fine. It's never going to happen to me. So it was definitely a bit of a shock. I feel like definitely had sort of this initial sense of embarrassment from like being as young as I was and being like, oh my gosh, like what did I do wrong to have this happen to me? And I think initially I was sort of afraid to tell anybody, I think at first. It felt a little surreal. And, at some point I kind of got over that fear and decided to just kind of put it out there on social media. And I'm really glad I did. I think I had a really positive response from a lot of people, just a lot of support and people kind of coming out of the woodwork to just share encouragement and love and all of that. So, yeah.
So with that being said, was your triple negative anybody else in your family? Was it genetic?
Yeah, so actually, I got genetic testing. It turns out I do not have any of the genetic markers, but my mom's mom, my maternal grandmother, had breast cancer at a young age. I believe she was early 40s. I don't know what type she had. So it was sort of interesting. I thought that maybe there would be a genetic component given that she had also had breast cancer, but no BRCA genes, at least, nothing that we can currently test for, I guess. So the kind of ironic thing is that I'd actually had my first mammogram already because of the family history with my grandmother being as young as she was. And so I had a mammogram in the fall of 2022. So a little over a year and a half before I got my diagnosis. And so it came back all clear, although my surgeon, was like, well, maybe it was kind of in the very, very beginning stages, just not detectable by a mammogram. But I had this very, false sense of security, like, okay, I'm good. Like, didn't have plans of getting a mammogram again. When we essentially found my cancer by accident, my husband felt a lump. Really, really grateful that he did. I call him my hero for saving my life. And as soon as he felt it, I was just like, in my head, I'm like, okay, well, there's no way this could be cancer, right? But like, I'm sure it's benign, but I have to check it out. I just like, for peace of mind, I have to like have somebody confirm that it's nothing. And so I got it checked out right away. They had me get a mammogram and ultrasound, and they're like, yep, there's definitely something there. We're gonna do a biopsy. So of course I was very nervous, but the doctor that did the biopsy was like, this has all the signs of being benign. And so I had, again, in this, false sense of security that, okay, everything's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
And then that was on a Friday. And then that following Monday is the day that I got the official diagnosis. Probably one of the worst days of the whole cancer journey. Just, finding out, seeing those words on the screen, invasive ductal carcinoma, not really knowing what it means, but knowing that it's cancer. And
So did you find out like reading in your portal?
That was probably the worst part is like I get the email, and then It popped up. And then, a nurse calls me like 15 minutes later, but I'm already like in tears. And she's like, oh, I guess you probably already know the news. I'm like, yep, that was not the best way to find out.
No.
And so that was definitely, it was a rough day. Just not knowing. I mean, at that point, they didn't know what stage it was. I didn't know about, if it had spread or anything. It was really all we know is a invasive ductal carcinoma. It's grade 3 cells. So they're, it's aggressive. It's growing fast. It's just like, oh my gosh, I'm like thinking that in my head, I'm like, how fast is this growing? Like, did this pop up overnight? Like, I need to like get somebody and have them, remove it from me immediately. And I'm just kind of all the things swirling through my head. So thankfully I had my first appointment 2 days later with my surgeon, who ended up just being absolutely amazing. It took a minute to find my team, but ended up with an absolutely amazing team that just put me at ease. And I knew that I was in good hands, and I knew they were going to take good care of me. And so she was like, okay, you've got triple negative breast cancer, which is not the best kind, but it's really early stage 2. An MRI confirmed that there had been no spread, or it didn't appear that there was any spread. It was localized, a 3.4 centimeter tumor. And I was like, okay, let's go. Let's do surgery right now. And she's like, I'm sorry, that's not the standard protocol for triple negative. She's like, you have to do chemo. And to me, it was really hard. It was really hard for me to hear that, because chemo is kind of my worst nightmare.
Especially being a health person, how hard. Yeah.
Absolutely. And some backstory, I actually have a history of autoimmune issues. So I have had, I think about 6 different autoimmune issues over the course of my life. So I have a very overactive immune system. And so I've had to take some, heavy duty medications in the past. And I've had some not so great experiences with those medications. And so I think, being a health person, just kind of very nervous and hesitant about putting things in my body. And, when you hear the words chemo, it's like, that's, it's as heavy duty as it gets. So that definitely took me a minute to wrap my head around it. But I think, and it was funny. My husband and I had been watching a show where one of the characters was going through chemo, and he was like throwing up, and it looked horrible. And I remember and this is like weeks before my diagnosis. I remember turning to my husband. I'm like, oh, I would never do chemo. And then, famous last words, because as soon as you're faced with, when it's you, when it's cancer, it's life or death. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to do what I have to do. And so I tried to just view it as, okay, this is, it's not poison. This is what's going to fight the cancer. So, that was, like I said, took a minute to get my head wrapped around that. And after I met with my surgeon, the next step was meeting with an oncologist. And the initial oncologist was not the best fit for me. So I know she was really pushing for me to do immunotherapy in addition to the chemotherapy. And I just knew for myself, with my autoimmune history, that I was really, really nervous about that, and I'm really hesitant about doing something like that, because I knew that my immune system didn't really need an extra boost. And so I think that was one of the biggest initial takeaways from this experience, was learning to be an advocate for myself, and learning to really, listen to your intuition. I learned how important it was to find a care team that you feel comfortable literally with your life. So I remember just leaving that appointment just feeling awful and being like, this doesn't feel like the right thing to do for me, but I feel like she's pushing me to do this. And just kind of like, I left my appointment with my surgeon feeling so great. Like, oh my gosh, she was like, you're going to be fine. Like, we're going to cure you. You're going to get through this. And I was like on top of the world. And then I had this appointment, and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm just like right back where I was, when I got my diagnosis. And so, I kind of thought about it for a little bit, and I was like, oh, I should just go through with this. And, but I finally decided, no, like I gotta listen to my gut, and, ended up getting a second opinion, which I'm so glad I did, because the second oncologist was like, yeah, given your history of autoimmune issues, like this is not a good fit for you. can be a very helpful tool for a lot of people, but for you, it's just not the right option. And so I made me feel so much better. And I was like, okay, I'm going to move forward with you. I've got my team. I feel good about, I don't want to do, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do chemo, but I'm here and I'm going to do it. And so, yeah. So then kind of after that, yeah, it was time to get started with treatment. And it's funny because I think, when you get the initial diagnosis, it just kind of flips your world upside down a little bit. I felt like I was kind of faced with my, like, the idea of my own mortality kind of for the first time in my life, and that was really terrifying. But then I think once we got the prognosis, it was early stage 2, it was localized. I was like, okay, I think like this is gonna be okay, like we're gonna get through this. And then I think I had the like time and space to start worrying about the little things. Like I was like, oh my gosh, okay, now I'm going through chemo and like I'm gonna lose my hair. And I had a little bit of a meltdown about that. I used to have very long hair, and I don't know, I feel like it was a part of my identity. It was just like, it was important to me. And I think, I cut my hair short one time when I was like 10 years old, and it looked terrible. And so after that, I was like, I'm not a short hair person. Like I have to have my long hair. And so I remember just like having a meltdown, and my husband was like, he was trying to figure out like, okay, what are options, like what can we do. I looked into the cold capping, but found out that for the type of chemo that I was getting, it didn't have a super high success rate. So I was like, I'm not sure if it's worth like the money and the energy of doing that, like if it's not even gonna necessarily save all of my hair. So he ended up finding a local wig shop that actually makes wigs from your own hair.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. So I ended up chopping off, oh my gosh, I think it was about 16 inches of my own hair, and had it made into a wig, which I still have today. And ended up, yeah, just kind of getting a bunch of wigs in preparation for losing my hair. And the kind of funny thing is, looking back on it now, I'm like, oh my gosh, I spent a lot of money on these wigs and it seemed so important at the time, but I actually ended up really enjoying not having hair.
I did the same thing.
Yeah, like I was like, oh my gosh, especially like when you're like feeling nauseous and tired, like after chemo, I'm like, it's like the last thing I want to worry about is like doing anything with my hair. So it's like, oh, I can just get up and like it's good to go. So that was one of the biggest surprises for me. I was like, oh my gosh, I never realized that like I would enjoy being bald as much as just the things that you would never even realize.
It's very freeing in a weird way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's terrible because it is your identity and our beauty is wrapped up in that. But then like, gosh, it is so freeing. Like you can jump in a pool and not have to worry about anything. I will never forget, my husband and I went for a bike ride and it started raining. And I was like, okay, it felt so good. Like it felt amazing. And I was like, I want to do more bike rides in the rain.
Yeah. Anyway. Oh my gosh. And yeah, just like taking walks and like having the wind like blow through your whatever. Like I had like these little, I call them my fuzzies, like these like tiny little baby hairs that never totally fell out, and like getting scalp massages, just like these little things that you would never even think about. I think I honestly struggled more with like losing the eyebrows and the eyelashes because I was like, oh my gosh, like my face looks so weird. But at the end of the day, it was sort of like, it was almost sort of helpful though, because I was like, okay, like I didn't really feel like myself, going like, it's a little bit weird to like look in the mirror, but I don't recognize this person. But then you're also going through this just life-changing experience, and it almost like helps to not look like yourself anymore, I guess, in a way. Yeah, I don't know. But,
I see it's growing back beautifully.
yes, it is. Oh my gosh, it's fun. I have to like kind of smush it down. I'm telling all my friends I'm in my hedgehog phase, where like when I wake up in the morning, it's like all over the place. And I think I'm gonna quickly be moving into my mullet phase because it's growing longer in the back. So I'm getting to the point where I'm gonna need my first post chemo haircut, I think. Yeah. But for now, I'm just trying to embrace all the stages and just have fun with it. Yeah.
So you have faced it, you've gone through it, you've been transformed. Now, so tell me a little bit about your chemo. How did you respond? So, and did you do anything, being that you're in the health industry and the field, did you exercise through? Did you eat different? Like, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So for me, I think one of the biggest fears about going through chemo is that I wasn't going to be able to do the things that I loved and enjoyed. So avid weightlifter. I have a gym in my house, which actually really came in handy during treatment. But I was like, oh my gosh, like I just had no idea how I was going to feel. Was I going to be able to still work out? What was life going to look like? And I made a promise to myself that every day I was just going to do whatever I felt up to doing. So I was not going to like put pressure on myself to do something that, I wasn't able to do. But like, if I felt good, I was going to try to do some sort of workout. And I knew that it wasn't going to be, as intense as some of my like old bodybuilding workouts, like, but even just to like do, a couple exercises for like 15 minutes. And so the first 4 rounds of chemo, I went through the AC, the Red Devil, for those who are familiar with that. I will say it was a very humbling experience. Definitely the hardest thing I've done in my life, and was not quite prepared for just that, like the nausea and just like getting completely knocked out, just spending, 24 hours just not being able to move from the couch. So that was hard. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is rough. This is really rough. And so I remember, that very first treatment, I got it on a Wednesday, and that the following day, I couldn't get off the couch until about 24 hours later. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna go for a walk around the block. And that was, that was what I did today, or that day. And actually, the other thing that I was trying to do, so I had, being kind of in the health and fitness industry, and a couple people recommend sort of they call it a fast mimicking diet that is supposed to help with the effects of chemo. Essentially, like if you follow this, it's not a complete fast, but just like super low calorie, things like just like bone broth and like kind of minimal things prior to your treatment, and then like afterwards. So it was like a period of almost like 60 hours of fasting. And so I was like, oh, that sounds great. Like if we can spare the healthy cells,
Yeah.
and, help the chemo target just the cancer. And yeah, in theory, it sounded great. I did it for my first time. And then I tried to do it for the second treatment, and I just couldn't. Like the fasting made the nausea worse. I like ended up just even in that first couple weeks, like just losing so much weight unintentionally. I was like, oh my gosh, okay. So like, I had the best of intentions. It sounded great, but I was like, nope, I kind of had to let go of just, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, or I call myself a recovering perfectionist. And I was like, I just have to let go of all of that. I'm just like, every day I'm just going to get up and do the best I can. And so, yeah, tried that, failed, and that was okay.
That is okay. You tried it. It sounded good. It's not for you.
Exactly. And hey, if anyone can follow that, power to them. Yeah, so that after that, I feel like the first treatment, after that first 24 hours, I was like, oh, I actually like feel pretty good. And, I was able to do some workouts, and I was like, I was feeling okay. And then about a week, so I was getting the AC treatments were scheduled for every 2 weeks. So it was about a week and a half after that first one. So I was kind of coming up on my second one. And I just started having this really intense pain. And I had no idea what was going on. And I pride myself on being a tough cookie. I'm like, I have a pain tolerance. I'm fine. Like, oh, it's probably just whatever, a normal side effect or something. But it got to the point where I was like, okay, this pain is so intense. I have to go to the ER.
Yeah.
And found out I actually had a 5 centimeter abscess in my GI tract. So
Well, that's terrifying.
a very like freak incident thing. Like my oncologist was like, wow, this isn't really a direct, side effect of chemo. It's like, it was hard. I mean, he was like, I really don't know. We don't know what the explanation is. And maybe it's one of those things that like there was, something that your body could have just cleared out on its own, but because you're going through chemo and your immune system was suppressed. So yeah, a week and a half after my first chemo treatment, I had to have emergency surgery to drain an abscess, and then was put on some heavy duty antibiotics. And that was really, really rough. So this was all, I was like not even 2 weeks into treatment. And I just remember being like, so I had to, as part of the recovery process, had to like take these like Epsom salt sitz baths. And I was sitting in my bathtub, just like staring at the ceiling, like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I've hit rock bottom. Like, I don't know how I can keep going. But I also knew that like, I didn't really have a choice, you know.
No.
I had to keep going. And so I think during that period of time, I really had to embrace, you know, the idea of just taking it one tiny step at a time, you know. And I think in a weird way, you know, I say this to people and it sounds strange, but in a way, being a bodybuilder, I feel like kind of helped prepare me for this, in the sense that, like, when you are preparing for a bodybuilding competition, you have a very like structured like prep, and it's like, okay, you know, they could be anywhere from, you know, like for me, like 4+ weeks long. And so it's like, you kind of just like take it 1 week at a time. Like, okay, I'm 24 weeks out. This is what I have to do. And so I kept thinking of it like, okay, so I was taking it kind of the first chemo phase at a time. So I'm like, okay, I've got, you know, one treatment down, I've got 3 to go. And just focusing on, you know, 1 week at a time. On the days where I felt terrible, sometimes it was 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time, but just like, okay, it felt overwhelming to think about, like, oh my gosh, you know, because the original plan was you have to go through 16 rounds of chemo. And so the idea of like, oh my gosh, like I've only gone through 1 round of chemo, like how am I going to do 15 more? I was like, okay, nope, we're not going to think about everything I have to do. We're just going to take it like one little thing at a time. And I think, that was super helpful for me. It was just like, I learned to really appreciate the days that I felt good. I think I was prepared to be really tired and I was prepared for the fatigue, but I don't know. I think the nausea part to me was just the absolute worst. I felt like it was just inescapable. Yeah, like I love to go for bike rides, and I tried to go for a bike ride with my husband, and I was like, I don't feel good. Like I can't do this. And it was hard. That was really hard. And so I think on the days that I felt good, I was like, okay, I'm gonna take advantage of this, and not try to like overdo it or push myself too hard. But I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get out for a little walk. I'm gonna do a little workout. And yeah, I was really proud of myself. I was able to I was able to get some workouts in. It wasn't great, but I was like, I didn't completely stop working out. And that was really my only goal, was just to do something. And they were pretty sad workouts, but you know, it was the best that I could do. And I was happy that I was still able to do something. So
Yeah.
that felt really good. And I think, so at this point, that was May and June that I finished my 4 AC treatments. And so I feel like the biggest turning point in my treatment was that I had my first ultrasound after completing the first 4 rounds of chemo, and found out that my tumor had shrunk from 3.4 centimeters to, oh my gosh, what was it? It was basically like tiny. It was like, you know, a centimeter, or like less than a centimeter. It was like the size of like a smushed pea or something
Good.
like that.
It was working. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think I just remember being like just over the moon. Like I was so thrilled, because I was like, oh, I feel like what I went through was just, it was awful. It was just not fun. And I was like, the last thing I wanted to find out was that, you know, this didn't work, or, you know, either that my tumor didn't shrink at all, or, you know, even worse, it grew. And so to find out that it had caused a significant reduction in the tumor was just amazing. And so I feel like that gave me just so much hope and optimism, and just you know, I feel like I'm a very just naturally positive, optimistic person, which I think helps a lot. I, you know, embraced a lot of like cheesy mantras, and like my favorite, I had this shirt that is a little like mint leaf on it. He's called encouragement. Like he goes like, "You're doing good. You got this." Like just all that stuff. Like I don't know. I love that kind of stuff. Just ridiculous. And so I was, you know, obviously doing my best to remain positive through those first 4 treatments, even though it was really tough sometimes. But then I think once I got the good news, I was like, okay, like I can make it through.
Yeah.
So that was a big turning point. And yeah, I feel like at that point the worst of it was really behind me, which was really great.
Yeah. Now, how was the rest of the treatment once you switched over to the other chemo?
Yeah, so then after that, I did 12 treatments of the paclitaxel and carboplatin. And I remember, so that I went from going every other week to then weekly treatments. And I remember when I started that, I was like, oh my gosh, this seems really intense and overwhelming, like doing like 12 compared to the 4 and doing it every week. And like, how's my body going to respond to this? Because I think on one hand, even though the first 4 rounds were really rough, it was like, you learn what to expect. So it was like, okay, you know, after you've had 1, you're like, okay, I know how this is going to go the next 3, versus taking a bunch of, or taking new drugs. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going to happen. And so I was a little bit nervous going into it. And I remember showing up to the hospital for my appointment. And right outside the infusion center was this therapy dog, this cute little golden retriever who I'd never seen before. But I was like, oh my gosh, it's like the universe like knew that I needed a little bit of love today. And so I just like, it was a little bit early for my appointment. So I just like sat there and pet him for a little bit. I was like, okay, I think this is a good sign. Everything's going to be okay. And then I got to the infusion center and I had so many just, amazing nurses and just amazing people. But this nurse on this particular day made me a little bit nervous because she was like, oh yeah, a lot of people have allergic reactions to this. And I'm like, oh, I'm kind of a naturally anxious person. So I remember hearing that. And I was just like, I remember just once she hooked me up and we started, and she's just like, I felt like she was staring at me. Maybe she wasn't. I don't know. But she was like waiting for something to happen. And I was like, oh my gosh, is something happening? Is something happening? But nothing happened.
Okay,
allergic
good.
reaction. So it was like very anticlimactic. And I remember, waking up the next day and like expecting to feel terrible like I did after the first 4 rounds. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I feel fine. Like it was a really weird experience. And not that I like felt amazing or I didn't have side effects, but in comparison to the first 4 rounds, I felt like it was so easy. So I guess I know sometimes people have the order flip-flopped. And I'm just really glad that I had the AC first, I think, because after having gone through that, I'm like, oh, I could do anything. And so the remaining 12, I feel like for the most part, were actually kind of a breeze, which was great. I feel like I was able to kind of go back to a more regular workout schedule. Still not, as intense as what I was used to, but like a little bit more than I was doing during the first 4 rounds. So that was really nice. And yeah, I think at that point too, it was just with a 12, it was literally every time it was like, okay, 1 down, 11 to go, 2 down, 10 to go. And just kind of that countdown in my head, just like trying to have fun with it, wearing my like cheesy shirts and just like, I don't know. Not that it's fun, but just, trying to make the best of it. So yeah, I was really, really fortunate that, that those rounds, my body tolerated them a lot better, which was really great. And then I had halfway through, so after I'd had 6 of those treatments, I had another ultrasound. So that was the end of August at this point. And I got the best news ever, which was that my tumor was no longer detectable by ultrasound. So
Wow.
was really, really excited about that. My oncologist said, well, just because it's not detectable doesn't mean it's totally gone. There could still be microscopic cells, but obviously it's still a very positive sign. And so I remember being so thrilled, like, oh my gosh, I'm finally done with chemo. I can finish early. And he was like, nope, you should still finish the last 6. Dang it. And so, but I was like, okay, it's fine. Luckily, like I'm not having a bad reaction. My body can handle it. Like he's like, you don't want to have to do this again, right? I'm like, I do not. I would rather never do this again.
Yes.
So I finished out my remaining 6 treatments. Officially had my last chemo treatment on October 11th.
Ooh.
Had a celebration. My friend, she had gotten me one of those mugs that was like, this is my chemo mug. And when it's all over, I'm going to smash it to a million pieces. And so
Yeah.
I smashed my mug and that felt so good.
Well, that's actually a really good idea. I like that.
Yeah. I think she got it on Etsy or something. Yeah. So that was that was such a cool moment because I remember she got me that mug, really early on in treatment. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, like this is going to go, it's never going to, that day is never going to come, like it's so overwhelming at the beginning, thinking about all the things you have to go through. And then, getting there and being like, oh my gosh, it's such an amazing feeling. So that was a good day. And then I had, because I did not have any genetic markers and because, the cancer had not spread, it was localized, I opted for a lumpectomy instead of a mastectomy. So I had my lumpectomy on November 1st. So they removed the tissue where the tumor originally was, and then they also removed 3 lymph nodes. So the lymph nodes came back all clear, which was great. And then a couple days later found out that there was no evidence of any remaining cancer cells. So I had a complete response to chemo, which
Yay.
was, obviously best case scenario. That was...
And no radiation or anything?
No, so because of the complete response to chemo, we decided that, because I post surgery, we did a blood test to see if there was any circulating tumor DNA in my blood. That came back all clear, and so we felt comfortable, being like, okay, we got everything good to go. So
Yeah.
no radiation.
Okay. Well, that's best case scenario. And with the chemo, I know that is very, very hard, but I mean, you seem to have come through it pretty good, only being a year out. Congrats on being a
Yeah,
year out.
thank
That's
you.
exciting. So did you change your diet in any way? Like, what would you suggest that someone else kind of eat or don't eat or anything like that, being that you're a nutritionist?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing I feel like, so I had the best intentions, during all of chemo, really, because I think I started to question everything. Like, oh my gosh, like, was it something I ate? Like, should I, whatever? And as someone who already ate really well, I was like, oh, I was determined to like do even better. And then just with the nausea that I experienced with the first 4 rounds, I remember, I ate a lot of like peanut butter and jelly rice cakes and like popsicles and like that sort of stuff. And so I was like, you know what? I knew it was important to just eat something
Eat. Yeah.
and
Eat what
whatever
you can.
sounded good. Yeah. So I definitely just kind of did the best I could during that phase, and then kind of the same thing really throughout all of it. I felt like my taste buds were kind of altered a little bit by the chemo, and so certain things that used to taste good, like I'm a vegetarian actually, like I love vegetables, but all of a sudden like so many things just like didn't sound good anymore. Like fruit, like sweet things always sounded good, but I was like, okay, I don't want to like eat just like ice cream and whatever. So I ate a lot of fruit, which was good. Yeah, I think now that I'm on the other side of it, coming out of it, one of the biggest things now, I feel like I'm so fortunate that I feel like I handled it all quite well and still able to work out. And now, post chemo, ramping back into more intense workouts and like all things considered, like doing quite well. But the biggest thing I'm struggling with is definitely just some gut issues from chemo, just because with the chemo targeting the quickly dividing cells, your gut lining, that is something that is very much affected. So that's kind of my current focus with myself, is trying to figure out how to heal that. Kind of working on a little bit of a healing protocol for myself. So yeah, we will see how that goes. I'm kind of hoping that because I think one of the things I've struggled with is that my oncologist and my surgeon, my team was so amazing, and they helped me and I got rid of the cancer. But then after that, they're like, okay, see ya, you're done here, and
Right.
I'm like, oh
Right.
my gosh, but like my body is still feeling some of these residual effects of chemo, and like who's gonna help me with that? I'm like, okay, I guess I kind of taking matters into my own hands a little bit, and figuring out how I can kind of heal my body through food and supplements and natural things. So yeah, I'm hoping that I'll be able to get that figured out for myself, and I'm hoping I'll be able to learn a lot and hopefully be able to use that to help my clients moving forward. So, but
Sure.
in addition to that, kind of more specific stuff that I'm doing, focusing on whole foods, on processed foods as much as possible, fruits and vegetables. Protein is a big one for maintaining muscle mass, drinking lots of water. Yeah,
Yes.
just kind of the basics. So yeah,
Okay. That's good advice, though. I know a lot of us have had some GI issues afterwards. It's tough.
yeah, not
Right.
fun.
I think for me personally, I was thinking with your antibiotics for your abscess, like that too, totally just wrecked your gut flora and like rebuilding that. A
Yeah.
year and a half before my cancer diagnosis, I had an appendicitis.
Oh no. Oh my
It
gosh.
had ruptured, and so all of my intestines had peritonitis. They put me on like killer antibiotics. Like literally, people have
Yeah.
died from taking them, but they saved my life. So from that point forward, my GI tract has just been, and I have tried and tried and
Yeah.
tried, and I'm super
Yeah.
holistic, super healthy, try
Yeah.
to eat right, try to eat clean, and I've tried different things and it'll work for a little bit, and then it just goes right back to bad. So I'm just like, okay, so right now I'm taking it. I just told my husband I started a new probiotic 2 days ago, and 2 days
Yeah.
in, I'm like, okay, it's hopeful. It's hope.
Good. I'm glad. Yeah. I feel like anytime you have to celebrate the small wins. Anytime
Yes.
you have a good day, because yeah, it can be really rough, but
Yeah, because it does do a number on your GI, the chemo and your
mhm.
oral health and it's the whole same system. So it's a tough that one has been tough for me, and I'm almost 4 years out. So I'm like, well, I mean, eventually it might start working again. I don't know.
Yeah, it takes time. It takes time. And that's the thing I realized, I think. It's just like the healing process takes time, and I can be an impatient person, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
I want to, you want to feel good now, but it's, it's
Yeah.
all a process, and, one step at a time.
Well, I do want to touch on something that you said in the beginning of your journey,
Yeah.
because I too kind of felt it. I'm not a bodybuilder by any stretch of the imagination, but I am um, very healthy. I mean, I pride myself on how clean I was eating ever since I had my kids. And so when I got my diagnosis, that was my immediate first thing was like self blame. Like, what did I do to cause this? And what can I do to keep this from ever coming back? So I put it all on myself, and you kind of touched on that. So do you want to
Hmm.
talk a little bit more about how you've kind of overcome that mindset?
Yeah, I think, and I think part of it is, I think the idea that I have complete control over my body is appealing to me, because I'd like to think, like on one hand, that makes me feel like, oh my gosh, I have the power to like to change these things. But on the other hand, yeah, it's a lot. It can cause you to like, yeah, really blame yourself in an unfair way. I think one of the very first things that I think was helpful for me was when I had my first appointment with my surgeon 2 days after my diagnosis. And I remember asking, like, I had so many questions, and I was like, okay, well, I told her I was a bodybuilder, and I eat a lot of protein, and I do this and I do that. And I'm like, oh, I'm vegetarian. So I eat, soy, like tofu and tempeh. Like, is this bad? And I remember she looked at me and she's like, it's not the underwire bra that you're wearing. It's not the aluminum deodorant. She's like, it's nothing you did. She's like, it happens. She's like, nobody blames, the infant or the child that gets a tumor or gets cancer. Like, it's just the unfortunate reality. It's just bad luck. And I remember just like, that really stuck with me. I was like, wow, okay. Because I think I think it's such a reality, is that there's so many of us that felt like we were doing everything right. We ate really healthy. You look online and it's like, oh, all these different risk factors for cancer. I'm like, oh my gosh, none of these apply to me. Like, how? And yeah, I think the reality is, it's just like, yeah,
Hmm.
it's just things
It
happen.
happens.
Things happen. There's things that are just outside of our control.
Yes.
Whether it's genetic factors, even though I didn't have the genetic markers, but maybe there's other markers that we just don't know to test for yet, or there's environmental factors, that we just only have some degree of control over. And so I think I had to really just keep reminding myself that, and like learn to control the things that I can control and kind of let go of the rest. And so I think, as I think about moving forward, I think that I feel pretty good. My oncologist was very reassuring, like, because I had the complete response to chemo, that my chances of recurrence are quite low. But I also know that, triple negative typically has a higher recurrence rate. And so I try to kind of embrace like I said, the controlling what I can control and letting go of the things that I can't control, trying not to worry about it too much, stress about it, because, stress doesn't do the body any good. One of the things that I am personally incorporating, that may or may not have benefits, but I have started doing a little bit of fasting in my life. So I've started doing more intermittent fasting kind of on a day-to-day basis, as well as incorporating like 24-hour fasts every 4 to 6 weeks, just because I figure in my mind, there's some research that shows kind of benefits for autophagy and just kind of other potential health benefits. But I'm like, well, even if there's no benefits, I feel like I don't think it's harming me. So I feel like I have nothing to lose. I think it gives me a little bit of peace of mind to feel like I'm kind of doing something. So that's one thing I've started doing that, may or may not be helpful. We'll see. And then, yeah, just I think continuing to kind of live the healthy lifestyle that I was before. I mean, I had a couple people kind of make jokes, just like, oh, well, like, why does it even matter? If somebody like you gets cancer, like, why don't we just like eat garbage and not work out? And I'm like, yeah, but I don't think that's the takeaway here.
No, definitely not.
So yeah.
That's a great takeaway, though. I mean, it does change. It changed the trajectory of your mindset, because you're so young. So you're only 34. So you've got a long life ahead of you. So you can't stay in that, what if mindset. You got to live for here and now. So has it
Mhm.
changed like your outlook on like life at all?
Yeah, definitely. I think as soon as I got the diagnosis, I was just like, oh my gosh, nothing else matters. Like I just felt like all of a sudden all the little things that I used to worry about. And it sounds funny because, as somebody who has anxiety, you'd think that like this would be a real struggle, but it almost like helped me with my anxiety because these little things that I used to worry about, I'm like, they just don't matter. Like I felt like I had a whole new perspective. And, in a weird way, cancer treatment was so different than having my autoimmune issues, which are very hard to treat and very complicated and not straightforward, where I was almost like those are kind of ongoing. There's no really end to them. It's just sort of managing things. And so there was something very comforting about the fact that cancer treatment was very straightforward. And it was like, this is the protocol and this is you go step by step by step, and now we're done. And like,
Yeah.
so I think that was, a nice change for me in a weird way. But I think, after I got my diagnosis, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I I had a good prognosis, so most likely everything was going to be okay. But nothing is ever a guarantee, and so I was like, I just want to make sure that I spend time with the people I love. And I, like reconnected with some old friends from college that, didn't live close by that I'd kind of lost touch with. And I just really made it a priority to just connect with the people in my life and do fun things with those people. Like when I felt up to it, just to have good distractions from the not so fun, parts about going through treatment. Yeah, I think that was so huge for me. I think when I made the decision to just put it out to the world that I had cancer, I was completely overwhelmed by how many people reached out and were just, offered words of encouragement, offered, sent me gifts and cards and just like were there checking in on me. And it was so beautiful. It was really, really amazing. And I'm eternally grateful. I feel like I just like could never repay that. But so that was truly amazing. And I think, I've always, my kind of purpose, I feel like, is to help people. Has been kind of my driving force, as a trainer, health coach, nutrition coach. And I just feel like I'm somebody who likes to try to kind of make meaning, find the silver lining in things. And like, I went through this horrible thing, but like, what can I get out of it? And so I have recently signed up for a local mentorship program, so I could be a mentor for other women going through breast cancer. So I'm very excited about that. I'm hoping to kind of create a program maybe specifically for, women going through cancer or breast cancer survivors. I just I have so many ideas in my head and I haven't quite figured it all out yet. But I think this is now forever part of my story, and I think it just kind of shaped who I am and who I'm going to be moving forward, and how I
Yeah.
show up for my clients. And I don't know. I think not that I would have wished to go through this, but I think it's changed me, and gonna carry that with me moving forward.
I think that's fantastic. I was actually going to ask that because you seem so motivated and outgoing and being so open, sharing typically that would lead us into doing some things like that's why I'm doing the channel.
Yeah, I love that so much. It's funny. I was just literally talking to my husband about this the other day. I was incredibly shy when I was growing up, and I've always like loved people, and like I always like had this sort of vision of myself, like of the way that I wanted to be. I wanted to be this outgoing person, and I always like knew that I wanted to help people, but it was almost like I like couldn't get out of my own shell. And I don't know, it's like something about going through cancer it just completely changed me. And I feel like once I made that decision to put it out to the world, I was literally just gonna like do one Facebook post and be like, okay, everybody, I have cancer, leave me alone, bye. And then ended up just sharing my entire journey, which was so unexpected. Used to be like a very private person, but I don't know. I think something beautiful happens when you start to share your story and other people, really respond to that. And, they share their story and you just can connect with people on a deeper level. And I feel like it was like that was kind of something I was missing in my life a little bit. And so I just, it helped me open up, come out of my shell, and just I used to worry so much about what people thought of me and all these things that I feel like held me back. And it's like, I feel like cancer just kind of helped me let go of some of those inhibitions and kind of allowed me to like be the person that I always wanted to be. So
That's beautiful. It
Thanks.
reminds me of a butterfly coming out of a cocoon.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, the breast cancer butterfly symbol, but it really truly is transformative. Well, you have definitely blossomed into a beautiful, beautiful soul. And I'm
Thank
so
you.
glad that everything is kind of falling away because the world needs more people like you in it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
And I can relate on every level on that. I think that the things that don't matter fall away and going through something, I think for me personally, I didn't have a negative outlook on people in general, but I kind of guess I did. So then, or trust issues, whatever you want to call
Hmm.
it. But cancer allowed me to let people in and see the best in them. And so it has given me a better outlook as far as everyone I meet and everyone that's impacted by, myself or myself impacted by them. And it's just this beautiful thing that happens with people and connections and friendships and helping people. I just want to help people too. That's been my heart too. So it's good to connect with other ladies like yourself that are wanting to do the same because, oh, and you didn't mention the name of your mentorship. What is the name of that you're working with?
Yeah, so that's local here in Minnesota. It's called Firefly Sisterhood.
Okay. So if anybody wants to reach out and connect, then I can put that in the bottom down at the below. So anything that you would like to tell someone that just got diagnosed or any sort of words of advice on facing the battle?
Yeah, I guess such a hard thing. I feel like so many things, but I think it is super overwhelming and it's super scary. But I think what you said is so true. There really is an amazing community of women. Breast cancer has touched so many people's lives, whether it's personally or they know somebody. I love what they say. Always some sort of variation on like worst club best members, but like it is really really true. And like the Young Survival Coalition and just other groups. I know like locally there's lots of different organizations, but I think my biggest advice would be just trying to connect with other people who have been through it that can kind of be guides and help with certain things. I remember even one of the first things that I did was just like find like someone on YouTube to just talk about like, okay, how can we like make some of these side effects more manageable and things like that. And yeah, I think I remember something somebody said to me early on, which I remember feeling like it sounded so ridiculous at the time. It was like, oh yeah, this is, it's just a bump in the road. And I'm like, feels like a really big bump,
It
you
feels
know?
like a cavern that you fall into.
I know, but then it's like the farther I get away from it, it's like, oh, I guess I kind of
Yeah.
see what they mean. It's just it's a real challenge. But you can get through it. And I know that I found a strength that I didn't know that I had. And I think that's true for so many women. And, you're faced with this challenging thing, but you can get through it and you can make it through the other side and you can thrive again. It's not the end. So
It's not. There is life after cancer, and it's quite beautiful.
absolutely. Exactly. Yeah. And I think that was something I was so worried about. Like, oh my gosh, like, is this going to destroy my life? And, I'm like, no, my life is different. It's very different. It's never going to be the same. But I used to think that like was a sad sentiment. Like, oh my gosh, like it's never going to be as good. But like in some ways it's more beautiful and it's better. So it's just,
Yes.
you just never know.
You just never know. Just got to face it and get through it and keep fighting and thrive after cancer. Um,
Exactly.
wow. Well, what a great story. What a great testimony to your strength and resilience and how you've kind of battled it and faced it. I have no doubt you're going to do great things for the breast cancer community.
Thank
So
you.
thank you so much, Molly, for being on the channel and for sharing your story. For those of you watching, if you want to reach out to Molly, if you're in her area, just let us know. You can put a comment below. And yeah, just stay tuned for another episode. Molly, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
All right. We'll talk again soon. Bye.